And thank you very much for an amazing presentation. I really enjoyed the speakers and what they had to say. My question is for Jahirul. I'm really interested in your, in Bangladesh's use of stipends. And the question is, you've got a primary school stipend and you've got a secondary school stipend. And I was just wondering, is this like a social protection scheme? Is it a conditional and unconditional cash transfer? And if it is cash transfers, how do you sustain it? It's not just about getting girls or children into school, it's also about keeping them there. So is it a government-run scheme? Is it, and I saw that you talked about NGOs participating. So I'm really interested in what happened and whether it was sustainable or not. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. It is a sustainable one, and it's a government initiative. So it's still continuing, last 15 years. So it's a sustainable one, and government took the initiative with the support of the international agencies, development agencies, but now it's fully the government who are running this, like the stipend project for the female and also at the primary level. So it's working there still, yeah.
This is just an observation, and it is also because I have experienced it myself. And I think that with inclusivity, it is very important to talk about inclusivity of the invisible. The children who have autism, the children who have ADD. We know about children who have ADHD because they climb walls, but children who have ADD are often invisible and often are labeled and treated really badly in school simply because they are not diagnosed and they are not helped in the mainstream classroom. So it's just an observation that often when we talk about inclusive practices, we don't talk enough about those who are invisible. Thank you.
I would like to thank the panelists for a very interesting presentation that you have made for us. My interest is in Mr. Wang's concept of culture, school culture. I always firmly believe that school culture is very important for the development of a successful school or high-achieving school, or schools that mold children towards a particular direction. The question is, what's your view of building up a school culture and sustaining it? Because the way I see it, I've been in Fiji Ministry of Education as a teacher for a long time, and I always see schools achieving and moving towards a direction depending on the school leader, whoever comes into the school. When the school leader leaves, the whole culture that he has built lives with him and doesn't leave it in the school. The school never sustains or gets the culture to be firmly established as a school culture. So that's the struggle that I have, and it would be very useful to share some of the experiences that you've had. And when we talk about teacher attitudes towards inclusive education, for example, also, when the teachers leave, they leave with those attitudes and they take you to another school. So what happens to where they were teaching? So I believe the solution could be in the culture of the school, establishing the school culture for inclusiveness and also for other aspects of high school achievers.
Felipe, thank you very much. I love the question that you have asked. Culture plays a very important role, whether you are in Australia or you are in Fiji or India, and that you are absolutely right. The problem would be if there was only one person believed in inclusion, and that was the school principal. If that was the only reason that inclusion was happening in a school, I don't think it can be sustained, even if he believed and the rest of the teachers did not believe it. So that's the first thing. But the second important thing is, inclusion does not happen in schools where one person believed in an idea. Inclusion only happens in school where everyone took the responsibility to make sure the school is inclusive. And what I realized, there is a very good talk, TED talk by Simon Sinek. He talks about start with why. I mean, why do you want to be more inclusive? I say, if you want to be inclusive because we have a policy in Fiji that we should be including, that's the agenda driven by outsiders. I think if you really want to be inclusive, you have to say, we want to be inclusive because inclusion is good for me as a teacher or school leader, all our school. Unless people started believing in this, which is the beliefs and attitudes things, inclusion cannot happen. So what we need to do is, we really need to contextualize and think about why some schools become more inclusive and stay inclusive and they can sustain it, and think about, identify those practices. And then when schools start becoming exclusive, we need to show examples in the neighborhood. So when, you have to, very good example is ACAP that you are doing in Fiji, Access to Quality Education Program. If you think about, if you wanted to teach those teachers how to be inclusive, you took them to Australia, it will not work. But if you wanted to show them how to be becoming more inclusive, and another school was doing it, the most important thing is not to interview the principal, but interview the parents and students. And they will tell you what they enjoy to be part of that school. So I think that's how it should be done. That's my view anyways. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything else.
I agree with Umesh. That was a great question. Thank you for asking. Probably there a lot can be said about changing the school culture. Here are probably two small points I want to share with you with my working experience with schools. And I put it in the context of USA versus China. I didn't have time to do it before. So and I use probably a project I've done in several US schools. It's called a school-wide PBS. It's a part of the whole school model inclusive education practice. But PBS really look into social behavior needs of students. And then the RTI, response to instruction, really address in a school-wide system way to their academic needs. So let's say for a school that I've worked, and you can definitely pretty quickly sense how principals, school leaders, and some of the teachers think about what the current school culture is. So we begin with that, understanding what the current school culture is, and why they have come to believe if this is a good one or this is someone they just reluctantly live with. Right? So we begin with that, and then we want their voice to be heard first. It's not like we came to saying, this is bad school culture, you guys need to change it to whichever way. So we involve them in the beginning for thinking about, this is something you really want your school to be. By what? By all the think about, reflect on the key values, the shared value about inclusive education. Sort of to your question, why? Begin from why. And it was interesting that if school principal, and I have to say this is more from a strategic point of view, if the school principal jump on board pretty quickly, that's how we see change happen pretty quickly. I'm not trying to give over credit to the principal, not the whole community, but it's very important. And to your point, I did have a school where we worked 3 years, built the school-wide PBS model, then the principal and vice principal left after 3 years, and it created a chaotic situation afterwards. So that's why I want to put some emphasis there on the school leaders, and then how the community of professionals and the teachers be part of that process and talk about, even honestly talk about why they agree or disagree with the things we're talking about. So the school changed their culture by engaging this collaborative process for building, I would call it building ownership of what they believe they should be doing. It's not really someone impose what they should be doing. So that takes time, takes energy, and then really takes even some research-based practice, for making it happen. In contrast, in China, and that's really one of the most difficult part, because the school culture is really about the outcome, the exam-based outcome. So the principal and the teachers are under high pressure for considering inclusion, particularly because those kids with special need will drag the test score down when the school have them. So the school is trying to find a leeway for not fully including them. And that's how the project we're working on we have to spend a lot of time and energy for engaging people, for engaging school leader and the teachers to think, why you should believe this is a school for all the kids. When you say for all the kids, that doesn't mean you can exclude certain kids by doing certain way in a leeway. So probably that's a few points I want to quickly add.
I'd like to, Taitoka, acknowledge everything that's been said, and I think another layer that we've learned about in New Zealand, I don't know that this would work elsewhere, but you also need to understand from the perspectives of the kids and their families whether or not they think this is a good school culture. So it's one thing for the people who work there to think it's working okay, but there might be yet quite a different view from the people who are experiencing that culture. And teachers, and in New Zealand, teachers and students come and go, and the leadership come and goes, but the community tends to be much more consistent. And so getting some buy-in from that group to help the school make some of those changes can also make them sustainable.
Thank you.
Good day, everyone. I don't have a question, but I would like to say something. First of all, my name is Frida, and I'm from Vanuatu. I'm here, I'm doing my major in tourism and management. But I would like to say some words. First of all, I'm happy that we're having this symposium to the heads of schools and the professors, because for some of us students with disabilities, it's hard inside a classroom in USB. I have had one experience. I'm not only in a wheelchair, but I'm short-sighted as well. One day, my tutor came and saw how I was trying so hard to strain my eyes reading the words. And she said, "Hey, Frida, wait, I'll go and get something for you." And I said, "Okay, ma'am." She went and she brought the paper back. And guess what? I was holding the paper. Instead of her enlarging the words, at the front sides of the words, she enlarged the papers. So I had to hold the paper like this, and the paper was reaching my toes. And I was like, "No, ma'am, you have to enlarge the words, not the paper." So for me, I was thinking, how could I make awareness to the professors and the lecturers, the tutors? So this symposium is an eye-opener. Thank you.
Thank you.